Greetings, YouTube. This is going to be flashing out the Discworld I postulated in an earlier video where I was discussing how to navigate on a Discworld that rotates. Now, a static Discworld, or the sun is moving in the same track at all the time, it comes up and goes down in the same location, is going to be much easier, actually simpler than our world, because our world rotates and you're looking at completely different stars every single time. But if you had a static sky, as in a disk world, it didn't rotate, and the stars themselves didn't rotate, maybe they do, maybe they don't, would probably be easier to navigate with than our world. But when you have a disk that rotates one day each time it rotates, things get more complex. So fleshing this out a little, the world's going to have a year of 364 days. Going to be 13 28-day weeks, 4 7-day, well, months, 4 7-day weeks. So we're rounding things off. Because of this, every 90 days, you're going to have a free day, a high holiday day, literally. So every culture on the entire world is going to have some kind of high holiday every single 90 days. And that means each season is going to literally last exactly 90 days. It's not going to matter at all because there's no absolute tilt or anything. This is a complete world of magic. So again, it rotates one day each. The sun comes up in a different location every day, and that demarks what each day. So each arc of each mark of the year is going to be very set. And okay, I have to actually quickly calculate something because I just realized that I have not calculated something, and that is what's the distance, how much is each arc at the edge of the disk, because I did not calculate that. So I know that the circumference is, the radius is 12,000 miles, so the diameter is 24,000 miles. So that's hard numbers there, which gives you a circumference roughly 75,000 miles. I am spitballing that a little, just kind of making my life a little easier. That didn't work out. I didn't do that right. Hold on a second. Math is not my strong suit, I should like to point out. So let's take 75,000 divided by 364 equals. So each arc at the wall is, that can't be right. Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, 206 miles. So you would have to travel 206 miles each day exactly. You would always stay in essentially the same point on the disk, the same location, the sun. You'd be keeping track with the sun. And since that's going to be faster than I think anything can actually move in a fantasy game, short of teleportation, I don't think anything land speed can move 206 miles in a day. Fantasy speeds tend to be fairly on the low side. Obviously, that's really easy in our world. Airships might be able to pull it off. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure that out. I actually haven't calculated what the actual speed of the old Spelljammer ships, because that would be probably the rules I'd be using for the airships would just be porting over the Spelljammer, because they're so elegant. I love the way they look. The whole idea of the spell helms were awesome. So there's so much of it that would just port right over. But they're not going to be true space going craft. We're going to get to that in a minute. So you've got the discs, 12,000 miles in radius, 24,000 miles in diameter, circumference of 75,000 miles. It gives you a surface area about 450 million square miles. And Earth is roughly 200 million square miles. And I'm rounding that up again, going for ballpark figures. So 450. So this disk is over twice the overall surface area of our planet, and the land mass is higher. So in our world, it's 30% land mass, 70% water. In this world, it's 50-50 split. And the reason you can have a 50-50 split and not have a parched desert is because this whole thing's magic. There's absolutely nothing here that makes any sense. Discworlds can't exist. So because it's completely magic, the gods have decided that it's going to be roughly temperate. So we're looking at the classic European zone. So like from, say, Greece to just at the edge of the Arctic Circle, or at the Arctic Circle. So just in that's your zone. Hard, cold winters to places where you have sunshine all year round and very little rain. Now, the center is going to be the warmest spot because the sun comes over in a track, and that's the spot that's going to get the absolute most sunshine every single day, even if that track is different every day as the disk rotates. Though, which way would it rotate most sensible? Clockwise or widdershins? We'll go clockwise just for the sake of convenience. People tend to think in clockwise more easily than counterclockwise or widdershins. So you have the disks turning, you have your sun going in a track, you have much more surface area than we have in this world. So there's lots of places for everybody to go. And the interesting thing in this world is the weather. Now, if you have a static disk and you have the sun track, that would be your warm zone. That is your equator. And the warmest spot is directly in the center, because the center always gets exactly the same amount of sun every single day. And the sections of your disk, which are 90 degrees perpendicular to the sun track, would be your poles. So it's a really good analog to Earth. Poles are the coldest places, the equator is the warmest place. My disk rotates every day, which means that the sun track is different every 24 hours. And yes, we're going to have exact 24-hour days. Again, gods can dictate it. It's what they want. And it makes it easiest on us humans who would be playing in this setting. Excuse me. So that means that you're going to have 2 winters at the poles. Again, the sections of your disk which are perpendicular to the sun track. But they're going to be shorter, but they're still going to freeze. So you're going to get 2 freezing zones at the poles, at the quote-unquote poles, again, perpendicular to the sun track. And the center is always going to be the warmest. Now, at the center is going to be a building known as the spire. That will be a separate video. And within the spire is the great compass, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a big-ass compass on the ground. It doesn't move. It's the physical. It's like if you've ever seen a large compass that shows you, like, a tiled compass in a museum or something, or an art piece that shows it's in line with the North Pole and everything. That's what's at the center of the spire, and the north position is the one that always points at the new day. So the new day in this world is going to be the north position. We wouldn't call it north. They could call it anything they went to. We would probably refer to it as north. Because it's always where the compass starts every single day. That's the homing position. So that's going to make some very strange weather patterns if it wasn't magic. But it is magic. So the gods have decided that it's going to be, so the center of the spire is going to be like a Greek Mediterranean kind of an environment. Sun's 330 days a year, and the rest of the time it's raining. And you're going to have, as you get further and further away, the weather is going to vary more and more, because over the course of the day, you'll be warm, it'll start to get cooler, so you'll get more weather variation at the wall than you will at the center. And perpendicular to that track, you will get the most divergent weather, which is the cold poles. So you have 2 short, cold winters and a perpetual paradise at the center where it's always warm and sunny. And as you get further and further from the center, you have distinct habitable zones. So you're going to have agriculture, which is very much going to be all about where you are on the disk. So wine is probably going to be very much stratified. Wine is going to be where the best place to grow those grapes is going to be a set known quantity. You're going to know that X number of miles from the center, that's where the best for this type of grape, and you get further away, that's the best place for this kind of grape. It will also dictate like the best places to grow coffee and the best places to grow tea. These zones, these rings will be the best places to grow these, dependent upon the soil in the area, of course, because those zones can be passing through lakes and through salt water. And again, because the gods have dictated, there are both in this world. So you're going to have zones where bodies of water are fresh water and bodies of water are going to be salt water. Salt water will prevail over fresh water, just like in our world. But there's going to be ample fresh water, not to mention you have magic, which also is a great way of generating uh, uh, fresh water. So as far as the navigation goes, because this is a completely magical world, as one of my subscribers suggested, this is going to have a completely magical means of navigation. So every single spellcasting class in the entire game, no matter what system you're using with this disc, the lowest will have a low-level spell, a zero-level spell in Pathfinder or D&D 3.5, which is known as Compass. And Compass tells you two things: where the Great Compass is, directly at the dead center of the disc, and how far you are from that compass, plus or minus a mile. It's not the most accurate thing in the universe, but it will tell you how far away you are and what direction it's in. So with that piece of information, and if you have the right kind of timekeeping to know where you are in the year, will give you a really good indication of where you are on the disc, within a plus or minus of a mile. Not bad for a zero-level spell. And that would be like the most ubiquitous magic item in the world, which will be compasses, literally compasses, that would tell you both pieces of information. And there would be varying degrees of complexity. They could be really cool. You open it up and a little magical holographic disc shows up and it shows you are here, or very simple clockwork things. It's just an arrow and little clockwork numbers that go tell you what they roll around and they show you what the mileage is or something. So you get lots of different versions of compasses that will then tell you where you are. So every group of people is bound to have one of these things with them, even if they aren't spellcasters. But let's face it, in the world of high magic, it's very likely that there's always going to be a spellcaster, at least one, even a low-level one, like an adept or a mage in the party, so that you can get an idea where the heck you are. But there would be a higher level spell, which is going to I'd probably peg it at second level, which would be called Navigate. And Navigate would be a universal spell. And Navigate tells you within a plus or minus of 100 yards exactly where you are on disc, plus as well as your altitude. So I'm this high from the surface of the disc, or I'm this low from the surface of the disc, in case you're in a valley or you're underground. So now you know exactly where you are from the center, what direction it is, and what altitude and what height you are. So you have an exact GPS coordinate of where you are within plus or minus 100 yards. So you'd be able to look around and say, yeah, I am where I'm supposed to be. It seems that the GPS in my car is at least as accurate as that. There are times when it seems to be very accurate, particularly when I'm on a known road, but there are times when I have been off as much as a half mile, particularly in the rural areas. You are here, and the target's actually 0.3 miles in this direction. Sometimes the rural sections seem to be less accurate than the urban ones. Shocker there. So now you have the disc. You know how to get around the disc. You have a rough idea what the weather is going to be like on the disc. You have a rough idea how much landmass is, saltwater, freshwater, rivers, lakes, streams, the whole 9 yards. So you have all those things. Every single form of travel that we have in this world will exist in the disc, as well as having airships, as well as just directly straight out magic, flying carpets, things like that. And the airships, again, using Spelljammer, would allow you to get around this disc much faster. That's the preferable method if you have any kind of money. So states and powerful organizations and wealthy people own airships. There will be air navies as well as water navies. And that would probably be kind of the national demarcation line wherein if your country doesn't have an air navy, you are significantly below a power structure than the ones that do have an air navy. Kind of like in our world, if you don't possess nuclear weapons, you are of a different class than the nations that do possess nuclear weapons. That's just the way it is. And the people that have nuclear weapons are very much interested in making sure that you don't get them. And just like in this world, there's going to be an impetus for governments making sure that other governments don't get airships, because that gives them an edge when it comes to war. Having air superiority in this kind of a world is a major thing. You could also have floating colonies, which would also be very, very cool. Now, you could be asking yourself, if we can get airships, why don't we just sail over the edge of the disk and figure out what's on the other side? Aha, I've got that figured out. So, the maximum height you can go in this world is 6 miles. At the 6-mile mark, whether you're climbing the mountain ranges at the edge of the disk, the actual edge has mountain ranges that go 10 miles up. So you can see above 6 miles, but you can't go above 6 miles. But at that, sorry, I need to move this. At that edge, you can get to the 6-mile part and say, oh, I can keep going. But here's the problem. For every 100 yards you travel past that 6-mile demarcation line, you lose 1 foot of movement speed. Now, you never absolutely get to 0. So even if you're at 0, you could still theoretically continue to move forward, but you'd be moving forward so slowly you would starve to death or die of dehydration before you got the next 100 yards. And the same thing goes with airships. They start going above 6 miles, they start to slow down. And it gets worse the higher they get. And it works the same in the other direction. You can go down 6 miles in the Underdark. But when you get to that point, you start to slow down. Now, magic might get you beyond a certain zone, but if that magic runs out, you're stuck. You are fly in amber forever, and you're very likely going to die. So there is no way of getting around the disk. You cannot get to the other side. You cannot go through the wall. If you can actually tunnel your way all the way through the mountain to the edge, you will just hit a gray impenetrable barrier. Bingo. It's a hard stop at the edge. There's no going forward at that point. I would also, there is teleportation in this world. You can only teleport within the disk, and you have to live within those limitations. Now, you could, in theory, get to the 6-mile mark and then teleport yourself forward. Say you're using a crystal ball to see, I can see a mile ahead, a mile further up, you teleport to that point. You best have some way of getting back that doesn't require any kind of movement, because you can't cast a spell that requires verbal, semantic, or material components at that point, because you can't access them anymore. You can't move. So it may be a purely mental ability. Otherwise, you are stuck and you will die. So there's not going to be any travel to other dimensions from this place. You can't get to other prime planes. You might be able to get through to, I haven't decided whether the astral and ethereal travel is possible, or maybe do you just get to the edge of the shadow realm. There was some official setting that had no extra dimensional travel, and I'm having the hardest time remembering which one it was, because whichever one it was had come out with solutions for this problem, and if I could remember what it was, I would port those over into this setting as well, because I don't want that to be a thing. Now, you can still tap into the elemental power of the elemental planes. So you can still summon elementals, and you can still summon monsters. You're not actually bringing monsters from other dimensions. You're kind of creating archetypal templates of monsters. So you're like dragon. It's kind of like the dream time version of dragon with a capital D. It's just an archetype. You're summoning an archetype to be that monster to serve you, and then it dissipates. So you're essentially bringing in an avatar of that creature to do your bidding, and then it disappears. Since I love psionics and astral constructs would be still a thing, so you're still being able to pull an ectoplasm, whether you're pulling it directly from the astral plane or not, I'd have to play with. But regardless, you will not be able to go to either the astral or ethereal plane to circumvent the disc. It just doesn't work that way. You can't get to the other side of the disc through any known means. Maybe that's a big plot point in your campaign. The player characters decide, we are going to be the first ones that make it. Cool. That would be high level. That's going to be mythic level to be able to pull it off. Good luck with that. But ordinary people have just given up on the whole concept. You can't go above 6 miles. You can't go lower than 6 miles. You can't go through the wall. And it's a disc with more surface area than we have here, percentage-wise, and twice the size of this. There's lots of room in the whole place for lots of exploring. And of course, this being a world of the gods, they can be screwing things and changing things and moving things and creating stuff that didn't exist yesterday, but exists now and looks like it's been there for 100,000 years. The gods could do this if they so chose. Maybe they are. And if you'd figured out by now that this looks like one big game board, it's one big game board. And you're the game pieces. And what are the gods playing? So this gives you a rough estimate of what the disc itself looks like, the weather patterns, the surface area, things like that. And there will be another video coming up in the near future where I just talked about the spire itself, which is the building at the center of the disc, literally the axis that sticks up from the disc into the sky. That is the center most important piece of architecture on the entire disc itself. One other thing, as far as altitude goes, there is no thinning atmosphere. The atmosphere is the same pressure all the way up and all the way down. So you would have, the only difference is the only time when that would differ would be in the oceans, because then you have a body of water sitting on top of you. So the oceans would have higher pressures, but when you go up, you're not losing pressure. So there's no thinner atmosphere at 5 miles or 6 miles than there is at the surface, because the gods have just dictated it. You're going to have the same air pressure all the way up and all the way down. The difference underwater is that you have a column of water sitting on top of you in a way that you don't have with a column of air sitting on you. They haven't messed with the laws of physics to the point where water doesn't have weight. All right, so this has been a really long video. Sorry about that. So this has been fleshing out the Discworld, which I still haven't come up with a name for. So that's open to suggestions if anyone has any ideas for a Discworld name. That would be cool. Other than just Discworld, which has been kind of used by far more famous and well-researched and talented people than myself. So thank you for being here for the latest Discworld video, and maybe you can help me come up with a name.